This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's June 2nd, 2025. And according to a few sources, the U.S. Department of Labor mediated the end to a strike for the first time ever on this day in 1913. The striking workers were railroad clerks, and that's honestly all I can tell you from the few brief mentions I found. It's always a little tricky to dig up articles about specific incidents that are more than a century old, and in this case, the complicating factor with trying to search for more information is that there were a lot of strikes in the news in 1913. The United Fruit Company strike in New Orleans, the Michigan Copper Mine strike, the Patterson Silk strike in New Jersey, the El Paso Smelter strike. Those are just the ones with the most fun names to say. All kinds of industries saw organized action from people pushing for revolutionary new policies we take for granted now, like the 2-day weekend or the 8-hour workday. And that railroad clerk strike was the first time the Department of Labor stepped in because the department itself was brand new. For about 50 years, workers had been asking for someone to act as their voice in the presidential cabinet. Eventually, William Howard Taft was convinced to create a secretary-level position in the department right before leaving office, tasking them with looking out for the welfare of working people across the country. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Last week, a group called Construction Coverage released its annual report that looks at trends in union membership across the country. It showed the steady decline in union roles is continuing, just like it has since the early 80s. And at the same time, it found that the salaries for union jobs have continued to rise and continued to beat out the wages earned by non-union workers. It also compared trends between regions, states, and cities. And on that list of large market metropolitan areas, it found that Greater Nashville has the second lowest union membership rate in the nation. Only 3.2% of workers in our area belong to unions. The only city of size with a lower rate is Charlotte, North Carolina, where not quite 1.5% of workers are in unions. In contrast, New York tops the list for most organized workforce. There, fully 20% of people work union jobs. Tennessee as a whole has slightly more union participation than Nashville, but this is still the 10th least unionized state in the U.S., and the South as a whole has a very low participation rate. Organized labor has always struggled to find a foothold in this part of the country. Workers banding together to stand up to their employer seems to be considered a particularly Yankee style of brashness, even though Southerners historically have no problem doing similar things when it's the government on the other side of the fight. Every so often, labor unions launch a coordinated effort to try to drum up interest among Southern workers. For instance, right after World War II, multiple unions strategized together on what they called Operation Dixie. But labor organizers faced intense opposition. There were at least a couple of instances in Tennessee where mobs formed to shut down union meetings or chase people out of town for daring to hand out flyers. There was definitely a strong attitude of, don't come here and tell us how to do things. And of course, the power players in business and government were pretty opposed for fear that their positions might take a few dings from any change in the status quo. And there was also a racial element because the workers who stood to gain the most from collective bargaining were the black folks who did the most dangerous and most underpaid work. And the white people doing similar labor were not willing to stand by the side of their black peers. That's pretty much when most states in this region adopted right-to-work laws, saying that even if your workplace unionized, nobody could require you to join that union. A lot of businesses really like right-to-work laws. They're often cited as a reason why our area has seen a lot of growth in the last few decades. And when big employers move in who cite that as a reason for creating jobs here, that basically tells people they were right to be wary of unions. No matter what statistics say about union jobs making more money, a brand new job at a factory built in a town that never had that kind of factory before definitely pays more than the lack of work that preceded it. Now, the union stats about Tennessee might be a little off because of some oddities that exist in right-to-work states. In some cases, there are worker groups that mostly act like unions but technically aren't categorized as such. One example is the Tennessee Education Association. Its parent group, the National Education Association, is generally referred to as the largest teachers' union in the U.S., but the TEA is technically just a professional organization. It helps teachers in many districts negotiate their contracts, but through a process called collaborative conferencing that doesn't give the TEA as strong of a position as true unions have in collective bargaining. And because of the right-to-work law, no teacher has to join the TEA. When my husband was in the classroom, he paid the dues, but he always had coworkers who didn't want to bother with it. But traditional unions have had some recent wins in our state. Last year, after years of failed attempts, the United Auto Workers won a vote to unionize the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, the first Southern auto factory to take that step and organize. In just a few minutes, how the latest announcement from TVA may be all talk. That's coming up after the newscast.
Nashville Public Radio is always here to keep you informed, whether it's the latest news or music you should check out. Every week, What Where Wednesdays shares the latest happenings taking place right here in Nashville by talking to members of our community, putting on events in your neighborhood and beyond. So tune in to What Were Wednesdays every Wednesday, and you can always find events at WNXP.org/events.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The head of Knoxville's Juvenile Detention Center, Richard L. Bean, is stepping down. 2 years ago, WPLN's Paige Pfleger found widespread unlawful use of solitary confinement at the facility. Now, she reports recent problems caused the county's mayor to lose faith in Bean's leadership.
Superintendent Bean got in trouble with Knox County for firing the facility's only nurse, who reported problems with the healthcare kids were getting inside. County Mayor Glenn Jacobs got the governor involved and called for the sheriff's department to take over management of the facility. It's not the first time Bean has been in hot water. There were calls for him to step down in 2023 after our investigation showed he was locking kids in solitary. He told us then,
"Well, I believe if I got in trouble for it, I believe I could talk to whoever got me in trouble and get out of it."
But on Friday, Bean announced his retirement, effective August 1st. He's been the head of the facility that bears his name since 1972. Paige Pfleger, WPLN News.
WPLN reached out to Bean for comment. We have not heard back. Tennessee's Department of Revenue has officially released the names of businesses that received tax refunds due to the franchise tax reform bill passed last year. At the time, Republicans said the reform was necessary to avoid a costly lawsuit, but did not disclose more details. The tax refund created a $400 million recurring loss to the state budget. It was also unclear what companies would benefit from the reform until now. The governor's own family business, Lee Company, received an undisclosed amount of money greater than $10,000. It's one of more than 15,000 companies to receive higher than that amount. Other notable recipients include CoreCivic, the Brentwood-based private prison company which operates facilities in Tennessee and is one of the largest political donors in the state. Wayne Halfway House is also on the list. The company operates private juvenile detention facilities in Tennessee and has a lot of sway at the legislature. Another concern about the reform bill was that it would be sending taxpayer money out of state. Big businesses like Amazon, Coca-Cola, and Walmart got breaks of more than $10,000. The information will only be available for public viewing for 1 month on the Department of Revenue's website and will be taken down June 30th. Ballad Health is a hospital chain in Appalachia with a troubled performance record. The state wanted to prevent hospital closures in the region, so Tennessee hospital regulators allowed Ballad Health to establish a monopoly in a 29-county swath of Appalachia, as long as it met performance expectations. Yet, after years of poor reviews, the state has lowered those expectations, according to KFF Health News. Ballad's contract with the state lays out requirements for determining if the chain provides a clear and convincing benefit to the public. It's been renegotiated a few times since the first iteration, which was signed in 2018. The newest agreement was released to the public in May. It places the bar for Ballad at a performance level that would earn a D on most A to F grading scales, according to KFF. Out of 100 possible points on the assessment, the chain could earn the clear and convincing title with only 65 points. and it would allow the monopoly to continue operating with as few as 55 points. A county commissioner in Carter County criticized the new agreement, saying they've made a way that they can fail and still pass. Nashville expanded one of its transit offerings this weekend. WeGo's Access on Demand is a program that picks up people with disabilities directly from their door. Until now, the service had only been available on weekdays.
Access on Demand service is expanding to Saturdays, Sunday, and holidays, giving riders the convenience of being able to move around the city any day they choose. They have long deserved that opportunity, and we are now fulfilling it.
That was Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell. The expansion is funded by the new transit tax set in motion by last year's referendum. The tax is also funding other upgrades in the near future. In July, buses that run along the city's 5 main pikes, Lebanon, Murfreesboro, Gallatin, Dickerson, and Charlotte, will increase in frequency. Long-term, many of these pikes will be overhauled in structure with added sidewalks, bikeways, and bus-only lanes. Tennessee can learn from Spain. 1 month ago, Spain had a major blackout. The country lost most of its electricity in less than a minute, creating a dangerous situation. Traffic lights went dark, subways halted, elevators trapped people inside. WPLN's Caroline Eggers explains some of the lessons.
In the week since the blackout, misinformation has been circulating around the globe. Many fossil fuel advocates have been quick to blame Spain's heavy use of solar and wind.
There's a grain of truth to that, but really, it could all be avoided.
Rick O'Connell is the executive director of the nonprofit Grid Lab. He says Spain had plenty of wind and solar that day. But O'Connell says the country, which was one of the earliest renewable adopters, probably isn't up to date with its planning. He says we have examples of renewable heavy grids working in California, Texas, and the Midwest. And a big part of that is batteries.
Batteries actually can rush in and support the grid when something goes wrong much faster than fossil fuels can.
Tennessee's grid, run by the Tennessee Valley Authority, can cleanly expand. But also, TVA is really far off from having issues like Spain.
One of my frustrations is in the U.S., the people that seem to be most concerned about wind and solar's performance on the grid are the people that actually have the least of it.
He says the real problems don't start until grids are closer to like 70% wind and solar. Last year, TVA had 4%. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
A dozen cyclists will ride through Middle Tennessee this week as they retrace the steps of their Cherokee ancestors forced to walk the Trail of Tears. The riders, all members of the Cherokee Nation, are part of the annual Remember the Removal bike ride. The nearly 1,000-mile ride commemorates the forced removal of thousands of indigenous people from their southeastern homelands to present-day Oklahoma. The 12 cyclists have been training all year for the ride that began in Georgia and will conclude in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the capital of the Cherokee Nation. Along the way, riders will stop at various historic sites, including Blythe Ferry in Meigs County, Tennessee, and the Trail of Tears Commemorative Park in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. The Tennessee Valley Authority is considering extending the life of its coal plants. Or at least, that's what the utility is saying publicly. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports that it would be difficult for TVA to burn 2 types of fossil fuels in some communities.
During President Donald Trump's first day in office, he declared that he was going to boost fossil fuels.
That is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
The plan is also to save what Trump calls beautiful clean coal. TVA is now responding to that desire. Its brand new CEO, Don Mall, recently said that TVA may keep its coal plants running longer than scheduled.
TVA's coal plants have been critical and remain an important part of our diverse generation portfolio.
It's a sharp change from what TVA's former CEO, Jeff Lyash, said just last year about why the utility is retiring coal.
We recognize the urgency, and while we're a national leader in carbon reduction, we know that there's more to do.
In 2021, TVA said in a report that it would be risky, both for reliability and cost, to keep its old, decaying coal plants around. And it would be hard to do, especially at the Kingston and Cumberland sites. TVA would have to get permission to pollute with 2 kinds of fossil fuels as new gas plants come online. Or TVA could burn coal longer if any gas plant construction gets behind schedule. But that undermines one of TVA's main arguments for building new gas plants in the first place, TVA's self-determined deadline for coal retirement.
Now we are very concerned that they're going to be double dipping on fossil fuels.
That's Leah McCord of the Clean Up TVA Coalition, speaking to WPLN at a TVA board meeting earlier this month. There were other folks there to speak out against the gas expansion, like Nanette Mahler, a resident near TVA's proposed Cheatham County gas project, just 20 miles from Nashville.
This is a listening session, but do you hear what we're saying in Cheatham County?
But back to the point. TVA made its coal deadline argument to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for the Cumberland, Kingston, and Cheatham County gas projects. EPA responded and questioned this deadline. EPA wrote that TVA should be considering lower cost, environmentally safer solar options. And other experts have pointed out that TVA could still have met this coal deadline with solar and batteries. Stephen Smith of the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy says,
if TVA had the proper ambition and motivation, they could be building out solar and storage to scale. They choose not to, and they choose then to mislead the public that it's not possible.
If this all sounds a little confusing, it is. Smith suggested that TVA has not been having an honest conversation with the public about what it's doing. And this latest announcement about coal might just be an act.
TVA is very concerned about how they are being viewed by the Trump administration.
Smith says it's political, but also it's important to not lose sight of the bigger picture, that our planet is warming, wreaking havoc on our health, weather, and ecosystems. A primary cause of this warming is the burning of fossil fuels, and TVA has the ability to clean up its system, starting with coal. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.